He will be at the Barnes & Noble at 7.
Not you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm mistaken.
I can admit it. 7626 Westheimer Road tonight from 7 to 9. That's Westheimer and Voss. That's Westheimer and Voss right there. You know what? While you're there, make a recommendation. You ever get to Baton Rouge?
I do.
There is a place that started on the Baton Rouge campus called Raising Cane's.
Mm-hmm.
It's fried chicken fingers, waffle French fries, and sweet tea. Change your life.
All right.
Absolutely change. It's called
I
Raising
can
Cane's.
use
Right
a
across
change.
the street.
Write that down, Raymond.
Right across the street from that Barnes & Noble.
That's dinner tonight.
That is dinner. Let me tell you something.
Right.
It's hand battered, fresh, nothing ever frozen. They don't cook it until you walk in the door. Change your life. Raising Cane's.
See, I kind of Brother Barry is. They're not even a sponsor of the show, and this guy is doing a straight shout out.
They're not a sponsor. How'd you know? I like to eat, and I like to talk about race.
Yeah,
You'll come in handy on both of those. What's the purpose of this book? If somebody reads this book, what do you want to take from it?
Failure is not fatal. Failure is not final. The great writer and poet, Nobel laureate Samuel Beckett put it this way: ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better. I love that. Try again, fail better. In 20 years of being in this broadcast business, what I realized is that I've had more failures than I want to admit. Some I couldn't even tell my family or friends. No one. There's no one that stands out bigger than the others. The ones I'm most disappointed by are failures of character: lying, cheating, deceiving, lack of humility, hubris. Those are the kinds of things that we have to work on to be better people.
What do you say to people? We have a lot of young men and frankly a lot of young black men who are imprisoned by 18, 19, 20. They get out, they have a felony on their record. Unless you start your own business, it's hard to get hired anywhere else.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people?
It's tough. I went to jail. My parents didn't know this until 2 weeks ago when this book came out. I couldn't tell them I went to jail for check kiting when I was in college. I wasn't doing a Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, but didn't know how to balance my checkbook for writing pizza to get through school. So I've had a record. I didn't have a felony record, but I know what it's like to have to work that off and to live with the sting of having made a mistake that way. What I do know is this: there's nothing in life that we do that we cannot recover from, and God, I believe, honors our earnest work. So you may have to work a little harder to find the right opportunity with a felony record, but I believe that if you're trying to do the right thing and going about doing it the right way and have some patience with yourself and don't internalize this, things are going to work out for you. There's nothing that we do that we cannot recover from. We can all fail up.
The book is called Fail Up. Let me ask you this. Do you think young, particularly black kids growing up in the inner city today, do you think they're getting the right messages about respecting themselves, respecting the opposite sex, respecting authority, their opportunities in America?
Like white kids, some are, some are not. This is not a race issue. We have a character problem in this country across the board. I'm concerned that I talk all the time about the devolution of our culture, about the decay of our civilization, and that's spilling over from, if you think that only happens in brown neighborhoods, wake up. If you think it only happens in black neighborhoods, put down the crack pipe. And that's why white Americans should be concerned about this character deficiency that we have in our country, because you can't contain that. These kids go to school with each other. They interact with each other. And so if we have a culture that's devolving and a civilization that's decaying and character no longer matters and morals and ethics and values don't mean anything anymore, all of us end up being punished and demonized and made less than by that process.
I don't want to pick on him, so I won't give his name, but there's a member of the New York Jets who's a very good football player. He's a cornerback. There was a story recently on the fact that he has 9 children by 8 women. And
you ain't got to give his name at this point, but go ahead.
And here's a guy who Charles Barkley famously said, "We're not role models," and I agree with that. They run fast or throw hard or hit hard. But young kids want to grow up and be them. You go to schools, I go to schools, and you speak to these kids. They want to grow up and be an entertainer or an athlete. And they see this, and that's somehow the sign of success. How do you break that? How do you say to those folks, that's not a life you should be leading because people are watching you?
I say all the time to young people, or to adults rather, about young people, in answer to that very question, that young folk would rather see a sermon than hear a sermon. They'd rather see one than hear one. And our problem is we keep speaking this language, we keep offering this rhetoric to young people about not being role models, and everybody can't be an athlete or entertainer. That stuff is true. What they're not seeing, though, in these communities are enough examples of the other. So it can't just be rhetoric. There's got to be a record. There's got to be something they can look at, something they can see. So I repeat, and people want to see a sermon more than hearing one. And if we want these young folk to grow up to be citizens that we can be proud of, just like President Obama, these young black boys that you're referencing need to be respected, protected, corrected, but more than anything else, they need to be loved. What's lacking in these communities across the country is an abiding love for these young people. Every one of us, you included, myself included, we are, I think we'll agree on this in the black church, we'll say amen on this, I think. We are who we are, you and me looking each other right in the eye now. We are who we are because somebody loved us. Amen?
Amen. But my brother has worked in jails and prisons, and he says, I don't think I've ever had to walk past a cell where that young man had a father.
Because we are who we are, because somebody loved us. And when that love is absent, when that love is missing, they find it in other places. And so we as a community, as a country, and again, people fool themselves if they think that these problems are just black and brown problems. The numbers are clear all across the board. There's more poverty in white America than there is in black America. Why? There are more white folk than there are black folk. Some of this stuff is just ain't rocket science. It's pretty basic stuff. So we have a deficiency of love in this country. We need to learn a love language. We need to be civil in how we talk to each other. Here's the bottom line for me. When I say love, here's all I mean. Because that word can trip people up, especially on commercial or public radio. People, you get into a public debate about love and they can't process it. Here's all I mean by love. Love means simply that everybody is worthy just because. That all life has equal value. Everybody's somebody's kid, everybody's somebody's child, and every human being that God ever created is worthy just because he created them. Not because their last name, where they went to school, how many degrees they have, how much money they make, how many titles they have. No. Each of us, every life, all life has the same value, and we are all worthy just because. If we could ever take that definition, my friend, of love, everybody being worthy just because, and operationalize it vis-a-vis our public policy, that means everybody would have health care. There'd be no minimum wage, there'd be a living wage. There'd be no environmental racism. Every child would have access to an equal high quality education. If we really believed that everybody was worthy just because and operationalize that, it would change this country.
I would have to reject the conclusion, not the premise.
Okay.
You're saying if you don't subscribe to Tavis Smiley's progressive agenda, then you lack love.
I'm not saying that.
I have a problem with that.
I'm not
Tavis
saying
Smiley
that.
will be at 7626 Westheimer tonight, 7 to 9, in his brown three-piece suit, very expensive watch, dressed to the nines, answering your questions, signing his book, which I appreciate the fact it's small, so it fits in the small of my back, like I like to walk around and carry my books. The book is called Fail Up, 20 Lessons on Building Success from Failure. You have about a minute left. Let me ask you, are race relations better today than they were 20 years ago?
Some ways yes, some ways no.
Did electing a black president transcend any of that?
No. I celebrate the fact that America is less racist with an African American president. We are not yet post-racial. They're two different things.
What do you say to white folks who live their Christian walk, who treat everyone equally? What do you say to those folks who are so sick of the word racism? They cannot escape it. A disagreement devolves into an accusation of racism. What do you say to those people?
I tell those persons that only you know and only God knows whether or not everything that you say or do is done or said out of love. The older I get, the more I realize it's a struggle every day to learn this. There's nothing that we ever have to say or do that we cannot find a way to say or do in love. It's not easy, but there's nothing that we ever say or do that we can't say or do in love if we try.
I hope you'll come back and join us.
I would be delighted, Brother Barry. I've enjoyed this conversation.
Tavis Smiley, New York Times best-selling author. This book is called 20 Lessons on Building Success from Failure. Fail Up, it's called. He'll be at Barnes & Noble at Westheimer and Voss tonight from 7 to 9, signing copies of this book, 7626 Westheimer. Tavis Smiley, thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, let's get you.